The acrid smell hit me first. Burnt toast, cheap instant coffee, and the faint chemical sweetness of my roommate's strawberry body spray. I jerked upright, gasping like I'd been underwater for too long, my fingers clutching at cotton sheets worn soft from too many laundromat cycles. My phone was buzzing. An old phone. The screen was small, the edges scuffed, and when I grabbed it, the weight was wrong. Too light, too plastic. The date glowed in pale blue digits. March 15th. March 15th. 6 years ago. I dropped the phone like it had burned me. It clattered against the particle board nightstand, spinning once before going still. My hands were shaking. No, my whole body was shaking. A tremor that started in my chest and radiated outward until my teeth chattered. "Maya, you okay?" Sarah's voice drifted through the thin walls of our apartment. Sarah, who would move to Portland in 4 months and who I hadn't spoken to in 5 years before she sent a brief thinking of you text after Mom's funeral. Sarah, who was supposed to be a ghost from my past. Not a 22-year-old grad student shuffling around in fuzzy socks on the other side of this wall. The burnt toast smell was getting stronger. I could hear her swearing softly in the kitchen, the scrape of a butter knife against charcoal. These were the sounds of a Thursday morning in March, 6 years before I died on a hospital bed with my sister's hand in mine, before cancer ate through my lungs and left me hollow, before I spent my last breath whispering that I was sorry. So sorry for everything. But I wasn't in a hospital bed. I was in my old apartment, the one near campus, but where the radiator clanked and hissed, and the upstairs neighbor played the same 4 Death Cab for Cutie songs on repeat every Sunday morning. I stood up too fast. The room tilted, and I had to grab the windowsill to steady myself. Outside, the maple tree was just beginning to bud, tiny green promises against gray bark. I had watched that tree from this window for 2 years, had seen it cycle through seasons, and I remembered all of it. The email. It would come today. My laptop was on my desk, exactly where I'd left it, surrounded by textbooks and a coffee mug with a ring of dried liquid at the bottom. I stumbled toward it, nearly tripping over a pair of shoes I didn't remember leaving in the middle of the floor. My fingers fumbled with the trackpad, too urgent, too clumsy. Gmail loaded with agonizing slowness. And there it was, third from the top, time-stamped 7:47 a.m. From jennifer.martinez@technova.com. Subject: internship offer, summer 2018. I couldn't breathe, literally couldn't pull air into my lungs. I just stared at those words, at that subject line I'd read 6 years ago, or would read or had already read in another life, until black spots danced at the edges of my vision. "Maya, seriously, you want toast?" Sarah called. "I burned the first batch, but I'm making more." "No," I whispered, then louder. "No, I'm good." My voice sounded strange, young. I was 21 years old again, and I knew exactly what the email said without opening it, could recite it word for word because I'd read it so many times in my first life, both before and after everything fell apart. Dear Maya, we're pleased to offer you a position as a software engineering intern at Technova for summer 2018. Technova, a startup in a converted warehouse in Oakland, 6 employees, and a dream. I'd turned them down. I'd sent a polite email on March 18th, 3 days from now, explaining that I had family obligations and wouldn't be able to relocate to California for the summer. Family obligations? My sister Jessica's baby shower was scheduled for June 2nd, and Mom had made it clear, crystal clear, with that particular blend of guilt and expectation she'd perfected over decades, that I was expected to be there, not just to attend, but to help plan, to organize, to put my life on hold because Jessica was having a baby, because family came first, because what kind of sister would miss something so important? So I'd turned down Technova. I'd taken a summer job at a local insurance company instead, data entry in a fluorescent-lit office where the AC never worked quite right. I'd gone to the baby shower, worn the pastel dress Mom picked out, smiled for pictures, and helped Jessica open gift after gift of tiny socks and blankets and stuffed animals. Technova had gone public 4 years later. The 6 employees became 600, then 6,000. Their platform revolutionized cloud infrastructure. I'd watched from the sidelines as the interns who had said yes became junior engineers, then senior engineers, then directors. I'd seen their LinkedIn updates, their conference talks, their casual mentions of stock options that vested. By the time I got sick, by the time the hospital bills started piling up, By the time I was lying in that bed watching Mom cry and Jessica pace and the hospice nurse check my vitals with practiced sympathy, those stock options could have paid for experimental treatments, for trials, for hope. Instead, I'd had nothing. A bachelor's degree and 5 years of experience at companies that never quite took off, never quite offered more than a modest salary and the vague promise of equity that never materialized. I'd been careful, practical, had made all the responsible choices. And I died at 27 with $847 in my checking account and medical debt that would haunt my family for years. I opened the email. The words swam on the screen. Innovative environment, mentorship opportunities, competitive stipend plus housing, equity options for exceptional performers. My phone buzzed again. Oh, I knew who it would be before I looked. Mom. Morning, sweetie. Call me when you get a chance. Want to talk about June. June, the baby shower. It was starting already, the gentle pressure, the casual assumption that of course I'd be available. Of course I'd put everything else aside. I sat down hard on my desk chair. It squeaked. The left wheel had always been loose. I remembered that now, remembered meaning to fix it and never getting around to it. The morning light was streaming through the window, illuminating dust motes that danced and swirled in the air. Everything was so familiar and so impossible. 6 years. I'd been given 6 years back, and I knew exactly what I was going to do with them. The campus coffee shop smelled like burnt espresso and old textbooks. I ordered a latte, something I never did in my first life because I was always worried about money, and watched the barista create a foam leaf pattern on the surface. Her name tag said Riley, and I had a sudden, disorienting flash of memory. She would graduate next year and move to Brooklyn to pursue photography. I'd seen her exhibition announcement on Facebook 4 years from now, had thought about buying one of her prints, but never did. Now she was just a college senior with purple streaks in her hair, humming along to the indie music playing through the shop speakers. I found a corner table and pulled out my laptop. The Technova email was still open. I'd read it 4 times already, and each time felt like touching a bruise, painful and compulsive. Maya Chen? I looked up. Professor Reeves was standing next to my table, the eye holding a travel mug that said, "But first coffee in Comic Sans." She taught my advanced algorithms class, and I'd barely spoken to her beyond homework questions in my first life. But I remembered, that she'd taken a sabbatical next year to work at Google. She had connections. She'd been one of those professors who could open doors if you bothered to knock. "Hi, Professor Reeves," I said, and my voice came out steadier than I felt. "Burning the midnight oil?" She nodded at my laptop. "Or the early morning oil, I guess." Just looking at some emails, I hesitated, then made a decision that would have terrified the old Maya, the careful one. "Actually, could I ask you something about internships?" She glanced at her watch, then pulled out the chair across from me. "I've got 15 minutes before office hours." Shoot. I turned the laptop toward her. She skimmed the email, her eyebrows rising slightly. "Technova?" she said. "Huh. I've heard of them. Small but mighty. One of my former students is working there now." She looked at me over the screen. "This is a great opportunity, Maya. You'd be stupid not to take it." The words hit me like a slap, even though I knew she didn't mean them harshly. You'd be stupid not to take it. And I had been stupid, hadn't I? In my first life, I'd been so stupid. "My family," I started, then stopped. How could I explain? How could I tell her that my mother would cry on the phone, that my sister would accuse me of being selfish, that everyone would say it was just an internship, as if 3 months at the right company couldn't change the entire trajectory of a life? Professor Reeves waited. "My sister's having a baby," I said finally. "Her baby shower is in June. My mom wants me home." "And you can't do both?" "The internship is in Oakland." "Right." Professor Reeves tapped her fingers on the table, a staccato rhythm that matched the espresso machine's gurgling. "Maya, how many baby showers do you think happen every year?" "I don't. Millions. Literally millions. And they're lovely. Important. But you know what happens at most of them? People eat cake, play silly games, open presents, and go home. The baby comes a month later, life moves on." She leaned forward. You know what doesn't happen millions of times a year? A student with your talent getting offered a position at a company that could actually go somewhere? I wanted to tell her she was right. I wanted to explain that I already knew this, that I'd learned it the hardest way possible, but the words stuck in my throat. "I'll think about it," I said instead. She stood collecting her coffee. "Don't think too long. These offers don't wait forever." "And Maya?" She paused. "I know families can be complicated, but you're allowed to choose yourself sometimes." After she left, I sat there staring into my latte until the foam leaf dissolved into nothing. My phone rang during discrete mathematics. I let it go to voicemail, but I could see Mom's name on the screen, could imagine her sitting in the kitchen with her second cup of tea, already planning, already organizing. When class ended, I listened to the message. "Hi, honey, it's Mom. I was thinking that we could do a garden theme for the shower. Jessica loves roses. Oh, and I talked to Aunt Carol. She wants to help with the food. Give me a call back. Love you." No pressure, just that bright, cheerful tone that somehow made everything feel mandatory. I was halfway across the quad when my sister called. "Maya, did you talk to Mom?" "Hi, Jess. Because I really think the garden theme is perfect. We could do it at the house, set up tables in the backyard. You could come home a week early to help set up. Mom said you're done with finals by May 20th, right? The sun was too bright. Students rushed past me laughing, arguing about some TV show finale. Normal college chaos. Meanwhile, I was having a conversation I'd had before, reading from a script I'd already memorized. "I might have a summer internship," I said. The words felt like jumping off a cliff. Silence. "What kind of internship?" "Tech company. In California." "California?" Jessica's voice rose. "Maya, the shower is June 2nd. We've talked about this. You promised you'd be there." Had I promised? I couldn't remember the exact words from my first life, but I must have agreed to something, made some casual commitment that had solidified into expectation. "I haven't accepted the internship yet," I said carefully. "Well, good, because this is important, Maya. This is my first baby, your first niece or nephew. You can't just—" She trailed off, but I could fill in the blanks. "You can't just abandon your family. You can't just be selfish. You can't just choose some random job over us." "I know it's important," I said. "Then we'll see you in June. Early June, remember? For setup." She paused. "I have to go. Morning sickness is brutal. Talk later?" She hung up before I could respond. I stood there in the middle of the quad. The phone pressed to my ear even though the line was dead, and felt the weight of it all pressing down on me. This was the moment. This was where everything had gone wrong the first time. And I was about to do it all over again, wasn't I? Sarah made pasta that night, the cheap kind that came in a box, with jarred marinara sauce and frozen meatballs. It tasted exactly the way I remembered, mediocre and comforting in equal measure. "You've been weird all day," she said, twirling spaghetti around her fork, "like weirder than usual." "I got a job offer." "That's great. Where?" "Technova. It's a startup in Oakland." Sarah's eyes lit up. "Oakland? That's amazing. When do you start?" "I haven't said yes yet." She paused, fork halfway to her mouth. "Why not?" "Jessica's baby shower." "Oh." The fork lowered. Sarah had met my family exactly twice, and that had been enough for her to understand the dynamics. "Your mom's doing that thing, isn't she? That guilt thing?" "It's not guilt, it's just family is important to her." "Family is important, but so is your career." Sarah took a bite of pasta, chewed thoughtfully. "You know what my mom told me when I got into grad school? She said, 'Sarah, I love you, but if you turn this down for my birthday party, I will disown you.' She was joking, mostly, but the point stands. Your mom isn't my mom." "Thank God for that," she grinned, trying to lighten the mood. "Look, I'm not saying blow off your sister, but it's one day, Maya. One party. You're talking about your whole summer, maybe your whole career trajectory." She didn't know how right she was. Career trajectory, life trajectory, everything. I pushed meatballs around my plate. What if I regret it? What if you regret not going? That was the question, wasn't it? Except I already knew the answer. I'd lived the regret. I'd tasted it every day for 6 years, bitter and persistent, until it was just part of the background radiation of my life. The question wasn't what if, it was whether I was brave enough to make a different choice. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Just saw the cutest cake topper idea. Can't wait to show Jessica. This is going to be so special." I looked at Sarah. She was watching me with concern and something else. Hope, maybe. Hope that I'd do the right thing, whatever that meant. "I need to think," I said. "Don't think too long," she replied, echoing Professor Reeves. Life doesn't wait for you to be ready. But I'd already lived a life where I waited, where I was careful, where I made all the safe choices. And it had killed me anyway. I couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., I was sitting at my desk, Googling Technova for the 100th time. Their website was different than I remembered, smaller, scrappier, with fewer team photos and more rough edges. This was Technova before the Series A funding, before the acquisition offers, before they became a household name in tech circles. I clicked through to their About page. There was Jennifer Martinez, the recruiter who'd sent me the email, smiling in a photo that looked like it had been taken at a company picnic. And there, my breath caught, there was Marcus Webb, one of the founders. I'd seen his face in Forbes articles, in TechCrunch features, in the financial news when Technova went public. But here, in this photo, he was just a guy in his early 30s with messy hair and an old Stanford t-shirt, holding a beer and laughing at something off camera. I knew what was going to happen to Technova. I knew about the breakthrough they'd make in August, the patent they'd file in November, the contract with Amazon that would change everything. I knew which engineers would become CTOs at other companies, which early employees would cash out and retire at 35, which projects would fail and which would revolutionize the industry. And I knew that if I went there, if I worked hard and made myself valuable, and said yes to the equity options that would seem like funny money at the time, I would have a safety net when the cancer came. I would have options. I would have hope. The alternative was watching my family scramble to help pay for treatments. Was Jessica setting up a GoFundMe with photos of me looking skeletal and exhausted? Was Mom selling the house she'd lived in for 30 years just to cover the bills? I told them it was fine, that they didn't need to do that. But they'd done it anyway because that's what family did. They sacrificed, and they'd resented me for it. Just a little. I'd seen it in Jessica's eyes when she visited the hospital, in the way Mom's hands shook when she wrote another check. They loved me, but I'd become a burden, a crisis, a tragedy that drained them dry. If I had money, if I had Technova money, that wouldn't happen. But if I went to Oakland, I'd miss the baby shower. I'd disappoint my mother. I'd confirm Jessica's suspicion that I was selfish, that I cared more about my career than family. I'd be the sister who wasn't there. The daughter who chose wrong. I pulled up a new tab and started drafting an email to Jennifer Martinez. Then I deleted it. Then I started again. At 3 a.m., I finally wrote, "Dear Jennifer, thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm honored to accept the internship position at Technova. I'm excited to start in June and look forward to contributing to the team." My finger hovered over the send button. Outside, a car drove past, headlights sweeping across my ceiling. The radiator clanked. Sarah snored softly in the next room. I didn't hit send. Instead, I closed the laptop and crawled into bed, where I lay awake until dawn, turning the decision over and over in my mind like a puzzle with no solution. I called my mother on Friday afternoon. I'd spent 2 days rehearsing what I'd say. I had written out bullet points on a notepad like I was preparing for a presentation. But when she answered, "Hi, sweetie," all my preparation evaporated. "Mom, I need to talk to you about this summer." "Oh, good. I was hoping you'd call. I found this amazing caterer who does these little cucumber sandwiches in the shape of, 'I got a job offer.'" The pause was so long I checked my phone to make sure we were still connected. "What kind of job?" Her voice had changed. The brightness was gone, replaced by something careful, controlled. A software engineering internship at a tech company in Oakland. I was pacing my room, my free hand clenched into a fist. "It's a really good opportunity, Mom, the kind of thing that could really help my career." Oakland is very far away. "It's for the summer, June through August." Another pause. "June through August. The shower is June 2nd, Maya." "I know." "So you'd miss it." "I'd miss it," I confirmed, and saying the words out loud made them real in a way they hadn't been before. "I see." Mom's voice was very quiet now. "And Jessica knows about this?" "Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first." How thoughtful. The sarcasm was subtle, but unmistakable. "Maya, your sister is having a baby. Your first niece or nephew? This is a once-in-a-lifetime moment. Internships are also once-in-a-lifetime, Mom. This company, they're really selective. If I turn this down, I won't get another chance. There will be other internships, other companies. Would there? In my first life, I'd applied to dozens of positions after turning down Technova. I'd gotten 2 offers, both for unpaid positions at startups that folded before I graduated. The insurance data entry job had been a last resort, something I'd taken because I needed money and couldn't afford to be picky. Not like this one, I said. Maya. She sighed, and I could picture her exactly, sitting at the kitchen table, her reading glasses pushed up on her head, probably wearing that cardigan with the loose button she kept meaning to fix. I understand that your career is important, but family has to come first. That's how we've always done things. The family motto, the unspoken rule. When Grandpa got sick, Mom had taken leave from work to care for him. When Uncle Richard lost his job, we'd all chipped in. When Jessica's boyfriend in high school dumped her before prom, I'd canceled my plans to stay home and watch movies with her. Family first. Always. Except family first had meant me second. It had meant my dreams deferred, my opportunities sacrificed, my whole life arranged around everyone else's needs. And where had it gotten me? A grave at 27 and a family drowning in debt. I'm going to take the internship, I said. Maya, I've already made up my mind, Mom. I'm sorry. I know this isn't what you want to hear, but I have to do this. Silence. Then, I think you're making a terrible mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Jessica's going to be devastated. I'll call her. I'll explain. I don't think you understand how hurtful this is, how selfish. The word hung between us. Selfish. I've been called that before, in my first life, when I'd asked to skip Thanksgiving one year because I had a project deadline, when I'd said I couldn't help move Jessica into her new apartment because I had a job interview, when I'd chosen myself, even for a moment I was selfish. I'm sorry you feel that way, I said, and my voice was steady even though my hands were shaking. But I'm still going. Fine, Mom's voice was clipped. Do what you want. You clearly don't care about this family anyway. She hung up. I stood there in my room, phone pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone. My reflection stared back at me from the mirror over my desk, 21 years old, scared but determined. I looked younger than I felt. The version of me from my first life had cried after this phone call, had spent hours doubting herself, had almost changed her mind a dozen times. This version of me walked to my laptop, opened the email to Jennifer Martinez, and hit send before I could second-guess myself again. Jessica called 30 minutes later. I let it go to voicemail. Then she called again. And again. On the 4th call, I answered. Are you fucking kidding me? No hello, no preamble. Mom just called me crying, Maya. Crying. She said you're choosing some job over my baby shower. It's not some job, Jess. I don't care if it's the fucking presidency. This is my baby, my first baby. And you're my sister. You're supposed to be here. I could hear her pacing. In the background, her fiancé, Tom, I remembered his name now, said something I couldn't make out. I want to be there, I said, and it was true. Not for the shower itself, maybe, but for Jessica. For the baby who would be born in August, who I'd only seen 3 times in my first life because I'd been too poor to afford plane tickets, too busy with jobs that went nowhere. But this internship is more important than me. Got it. Message received. That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying? Jessica's voice cracked. Explain it to me, Maya. Explain how it's okay to miss the most important day of my life for some tech bro startup that probably won't even exist in 5 years. But it would exist. It would thrive. And I needed it to, because the alternative was dying broke and desperate, was watching my family sell everything to try to save me, was leaving them with nothing but medical bills and grief. I couldn't tell her that, though. How could I explain that I was making this choice not just for me, but for her? That I was protecting her from a future where she'd have to choose between her child's college fund and her sister's chemotherapy? I know you don't understand, I said quietly, but I need you to trust me. This is important. Trust you? She laughed, bitter. You're abandoning me and you want me to trust you? I'm not abandoning you. I'll visit after the summer. I'll meet the baby. Forget it. Just forget it, Maya. Go to California. Have a great time. I hope it's worth it. She hung up too. I sat on my bed and stared at the wall. The poster I'd hung freshman year, a print of Van Gogh's Starry Night, was slightly crooked. I'd never noticed that before. Or maybe I had in my first life, and just forgotten. Everything was the same and different at once. Sarah knocked on my door. I heard yelling. Oh, you okay? I accepted the internship. Oh, shit. She came in, sat next to me. How'd they take it? About as well as you'd expect. They'll come around, eventually. Would they? In my first life, Mom had stayed disappointed in me for years, had brought up every family event I missed as evidence of my selfishness. Jessica and I had never been close again after certain fights, had maintained a polite distance that felt worse than open hostility. But in my first life, I'd also been powerless. I'd made the right choice and ended up with nothing. Maybe if I succeeded, if I could show them that this decision mattered, if I could help them instead of being a burden. I hope so, I said. Sarah squeezed my shoulder. Want to watch something terrible on Netflix and eat ice cream? Yeah, I said. Yeah, that sounds good. But later, lying in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about the anger in Jessica's voice, the disappointment in Mom's. I'd hurt them. I knew I'd hurt them. And part of me, a large part, wanted to take it all back, to send another email saying I'd changed my mind, to be the good daughter and sister I was supposed to be. But I didn't, because I'd been the good daughter before, and it had killed me. The bus to Oakland smelled like stale pretzels and recycled air. I had a window seat, my duffel bag tucked under the seat in front of me, and 7 hours to think about what I'd done. Mom hadn't called again. Neither had Jessica. I'd texted them both before leaving, simple messages about my arrival time, my new address, and gotten one-word responses. Okay from Mom, fine from Jessica. My Aunt Carol had sent a longer message. I know this must have been a hard decision. Follow your heart, sweetie. They'll understand eventually. I wasn't sure if that was true, but I appreciated the sentiment. The landscape shifted as we drove. The familiar green of New England giving way to the endless highways of the Midwest, then the desert, then finally the golden hills of California. I'd done this trip once before in my first life, but for a different reason, visiting a friend who'd moved to San Francisco. I'd loved it then, the possibility the city seemed to hold, and had promised myself I'd come back. I never had. This time felt different. This time felt like coming home. Technova's office was in a converted warehouse in West Oakland, wedged between a coffee roasting facility and an art gallery. The building was brick, with 3 stories, with big industrial windows and a parking lot that had more weeds than pavement. A hand-painted sign by the door said Technova, in letters that looked like they'd been done by someone's artistic friend after a few beers. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, just looking at it. In my first life, I'd seen photos of the Technova headquarters after they moved to a sleek building in San Francisco, all glass and steel and rooftop gardens. This ramshackle warehouse felt like a different company entirely, but this was where it started. This was where the magic happened. I took a deep breath and went inside. The lobby was barely a lobby, just an open space with concrete floors, a desk that looked like it came from IKEA, and a woman with bright pink hair typing furiously on a laptop. "Hi," I said. "I'm Maya Chen. I'm starting the internship today." She looked up and grinned. "Oh, good. You're real. Jennifer said you were coming, but she also said the last intern candidate ghosted us, so I was 50-50. She stood and extended her hand. "I'm Zara. I'm technically the office manager, but really I just make sure this place doesn't burn down. Metaphorically, sometimes literally. Marcus likes to leave the hot plate on." I shook her hand. "Nice to meet you. Come on, I'll give you the tour. And by tour, I mean I'll show you where the bathroom is and where we keep the good snacks. The rest you'll figure out." The office was one large open floor with exposed pipes, mismatched furniture, and whiteboards covered in diagrams and equations I couldn't follow. There were maybe 15 people scattered around, some at desks, some on couches. One guy literally sitting on the floor with a laptop balanced on his knees. "That's the engineering team," Zara said, gesturing vaguely. "They're nocturnal mostly. Don't take it personally if they don't say hi." She pointed to a corner office with glass walls. "That's Marcus's office. He never uses it because he prefers to lurk around the main floor like a friendly ghost. And over there," she stopped at a desk near the windows. "This is you." The desk was old wood, scarred with coffee rings and scratches, but the chair looked new and the monitor was huge. Someone had left a plant on the corner, a small succulent in a chipped mug that said "Code is Poetry." "Jennifer thought you'd want a window," Zara said. "She's good about that stuff. She'll be here tomorrow to do the official orientation. For now, just settle in." "No, the Wi-Fi password is I Disrupt the Norm 2018. "Yes, really. And lunch is at 1-ish if you want to join." "Thank you," I said. She smiled. "Welcome to Technova, Maya. Try not to break anything important on your first day. I sat at my desk and just breathed for a minute. The coffee facility next door was roasting beans, and the smell wafted through the windows. Rich, almost chocolatey. Someone's playlist was playing quietly, some indie band I didn't recognize. The guy on the floor looked up, made brief eye contact, and went back to his code. I was here. I'd actually done it. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "First day. How is it?" I took a photo of the view from my desk, the window overlooking the street, the city in the distance, and sent it to her. She replied with a string of excited emojis. No messages from Mom or Jessica. I put my phone away and opened my laptop. Time to get to work. The first week was overwhelming in the best possible way. I was assigned to work with a senior engineer named Dev, mid-30s, perpetually wearing band t-shirts, spoke mostly in code snippets and movie references. He handed me a list of bugs on my second day and said, "Fix these. If you get stuck, ask. If you break production, we'll probably forgive you." Probably. I'd fixed bugs before, in classes and personal projects, but this was different. This was real code that actual users depended on, code that was messy and beautiful and frustrating all at once. I spent hours tracing through functions, reading documentation, trying to understand systems that had been built organically by people who were learning as they went. It was the most fun I'd ever had. On Friday, Marcus Webb called an all-hands meeting. Everyone crammed into the largest conference room, which still wasn't quite large enough, and Marcus stood at the front with a laptop and an enthusiasm that was infectious. "Okay, team," he said. "Quick updates. Good news, we signed 2 new enterprise clients this week. Bad news, they want features we haven't built yet." He grinned. "So, business as usual." People laughed. Marcus clicked to the next slide. "Here's where we are. Revenue is up 18% month over month. Our infrastructure is handling the load better than expected, thanks to the back-end team." He nodded toward Dev and a few others. "And we're on track to close our Series A by end of year." Series A. I knew the exact date they'd close it. November the 14th. I knew who would lead the round, how much they'd raise, what the valuation would be. It felt surreal, sitting here listening to Marcus talk about it like it was uncertain. "Now the challenging part," Marcus continued, "we need to move faster. Amazon is launching something similar, and while I think our approach is better, we need to prove it. I'm asking everyone to step up. Long hours, weekend work if necessary. I know that's tough, but if we pull this off..." He trailed off, but everyone understood. If we pulled this off, Technova wouldn't just be a startup. It would be a real company. After the meeting, I went back to my desk and looked at my task list. There was a feature request that had been marked low priority, something about optimizing database queries. I'd read the ticket earlier and dismissed it as boring, but I remembered something from my first life. From one of those late-night Wikipedia binges when I couldn't sleep. There had been an article about Technova, about how they'd nearly lost their Amazon contract in the early days because of performance issues, database bottlenecks. I pulled up the ticket again and started reading more carefully. If I was right, if this was the issue that would cause problems, then maybe I could fix it before it became critical. Maybe I could make myself valuable enough that they'd offer me equity when I graduated. Maybe I could change more than just my own future. I worked until midnight that night, and when I finally left the office, the coffee facility next door was dark and quiet. But I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years, in a way I never had in my first life. The heat wave hit Oakland in mid-June. The warehouse didn't have air conditioning, just industrial fans that pushed hot air around, and everyone worked in t-shirts and shorts, sweating through the afternoons until the fog rolled in and brought temporary relief. I'd been at Technova for 3 weeks, and I'd fallen into a rhythm. Arrive at 9, code until lunch, spend afternoons in meetings or pair programming sessions, stay late to work on my own projects. The database optimization had become my obsession. I'd spend hours studying the codebase, running tests, trying to figure out exactly where the bottleneck would occur. "You're still here?" I looked up. Dev was standing by my desk, backpack slung over one shoulder. It was past 10 p.m., and I hadn't noticed everyone else leaving. "Just finishing something," I said. He peered at my screen. "Database query optimization? That's not even your assigned work." "I know, I think this could be important." Dev pulled up a chair and sat next to me. "Show me what you've got." I walked him through my findings, the way the queries scaled poorly with data size, how the indexes weren't optimized for the access patterns where caching could help. I'd prepared a whole presentation, had graphs and benchmarks, and a proposed solution. Dev listened silently. Then he said, "Huh. Is that a good huh or a bad huh?" "It's an impressed huh." He scrolled through my code. "This is solid work, Maya. How did you even know to look at this?" I couldn't tell him the truth. So I said, I was reading about database performance for a class project and thought our setup might have similar issues. "Well, your instincts are good." He stood. "I'm going to talk to Marcus about this. If you're right and we can implement these changes before we scale up." He trailed off, but I could see the calculations happening behind his eyes. This could save us a lot of pain down the line. After he left, I sat back in my chair and let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. This was it. This was the moment that could change everything. My phone buzzed, a text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Jennifer from HR. Marcus wants to meet with you tomorrow at 2. Conference room B." My heart started racing. I barely slept that night. I kept playing out scenarios in my head. Marcus firing me for overstepping, Marcus praising me, Marcus offering some vague good job that went nowhere. By the time my alarm went off, I'd convinced myself of at least 12 different outcomes. The morning crawled by. I tried to focus on my assigned tasks, but my mind kept drifting. At 1:45, I gave up pretending to work and headed to conference room B. Marcus was already there, along with Dev and a woman I didn't recognize. Late 40s, sharp suit, carrying herself like someone who'd seen 1,000 pitches and wasn't impressed by any of them. "Maya, come in." Marcus gestured to a chair. "This is Rachel Kim. She's one of our potential Series A investors." Oh no. Rachel extended her hand. "Nice to meet you, Maya. I've been hearing interesting things about your work." I shook her hand, trying to keep mine from trembling. "Nice to meet you too." "Dev showed me your analysis," Marcus said. He had my documents pulled up on his laptop, the database optimization proposal. "It's impressive work for an intern." "Thank you," I managed. "I want you to present it to Rachel. She's concerned about our scalability, and I think this addresses some of her questions." He wanted me to pitch to an investor on my 4th week as an intern. In my first life, I'd never even met an investor. The companies I'd worked for were too small, too insignificant. I'd watched friends give presentations at conferences while I stayed home, too junior to be included. Now I was here, and I had a choice: freeze up and confirm that I was just a kid who'd gotten lucky, or prove that I belonged. I took a breath and started talking. I walked them through the problem, how database queries were the backbone of Technova's platform, how current performance was fine but wouldn't scale, how competitors who grew too fast often hit these exact bottlenecks. I showed them my benchmarks, explained my proposed solutions, talked about implementation timelines and resource requirements. Rachel asked sharp questions. I answered them as best I could, and when I didn't know something, I admitted it instead of bullshitting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "How old are you?" 21. "And you're an intern?" "Yes, ma'am." She looked at Marcus. "Where did you find her?" "College recruiting," Marcus said, grinning. "Though I'm starting to think we should give our recruiter a raise." Rachel turned back to me. "This is good work. Really good. If Marcus implements your recommendations and they work as well as you project, you might have just addressed my biggest concern about this investment." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. After Rachel left, Marcus and Dev walked me back toward the main office. "That was gutsy," Marcus said. "Most interns wouldn't have gone looking for problems to solve." "I just wanted to help," I said. "Well, you did, and you're going to keep helping. I'm reassigning you. Forget the bug fixes. You're going to work with Dev on implementing this optimization." "Really?" "Really. Consider it a promotion. Unpaid because you're still an intern, but we'll make it worth your while." He paused. "You're in your senior year, right? Graduating next spring?" "Yes." "We should talk about a full-time offer after you graduate." He clapped me on the shoulder. "Good work, Maya. Keep it up." I walked back to my desk in a daze. This was happening. It was actually happening. I pulled out my phone and took a photo of my monitor, which was displaying a congratulatory Slack message from Dev. Then I opened a message to Sarah. "You won't believe what just happened." As I was typing, another message came through. From Mom. "Jessica had the baby shower today. She asked about you." I didn't know what to tell her. The words hit me like cold water. I'd been so caught up in Technova, in this new life I was building, that I'd almost forgotten. The shower had been today. Right now, actually, it was 2 p.m. in California, 5 p.m. back east. They'd be cutting the cake, playing games, opening presents, and Jessica had asked about me. I stared at the message for a long time, then I typed, "I'm sorry I wasn't there. I hope it was beautiful." Mom didn't respond. I set my phone down and tried to get back to work, but the joy from earlier had curdled into something complicated. I'd made the right choice. I knew I'd made the right choice, but knowing didn't make it hurt less. July in Oakland was a lesson in microclimates. Some days were so hot I thought I might melt into the pavement. Other days, fog rolled in thick and cold, and I'd need a jacket by sunset. I learned to dress in layers, to always have a water bottle, to appreciate the moments when the weather was perfect. The work was brutal and exhilarating. Dev and I spent 16-hour days implementing the database optimizations, testing, breaking things, fixing them again. The rest of the engineering team got pulled in as the project expanded. What had started as my solo investigation became a company-wide initiative. Marcus announced it at an all-hands meeting in early August. "We're doing a complete infrastructure overhaul. It's going to be hell for the next 6 weeks. But when we're done, we'll be able to handle 10 times our current load without breaking a sweat." People groaned about the timeline, but seemed energized by the challenge. This was what startup life was supposed to be. Impossible deadlines, high stakes, the sense that we were building something that mattered. I thrived on it. Late one night, or early one morning, it was hard to tell anymore, I was debugging a particularly nasty edge case when Marcus appeared next to my desk with 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you could use this," he said, handing me one. "Thanks." I took a sip. It was terrible, burned and bitter, but the caffeine was welcome. Marcus leaned against my desk. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why are you here? And I don't mean at Technova specifically, I mean here at 3 in the morning, working on code that's not technically your responsibility." I considered lying, saying something about passion for technology, or wanting to learn, or career advancement. But Marcus had been honest with me, and I felt like I owed him the same. "My family didn't want me to take this internship," I said. "I had to choose between being here and being at my sister's baby shower. Everyone thought I was making a mistake." "Were you?" I looked around the office, at the whiteboards covered in diagrams, at the code on my screen, at the sleeping bags tucked under desks for the nights when going home seemed pointless. "No," I said. "I don't think I was." Marcus nodded slowly. "Family stuff is hard, I get it. My parents wanted me to be a doctor. When I dropped out of med school to start this company, they didn't talk to me for a year. Did they come around? Eventually, when they realized I was serious, when they saw that I was actually building something." He took a sip of his coffee, made a face. "God, this is awful. Anyway, point is, you're proving them wrong by being here, by doing this work. That has to count for something." "I hope so." He stood up. "Get some sleep, Maya. We need you sharp tomorrow." After he left, I sat there with my terrible coffee, thinking about family and choices, and whether proving people wrong was the same as making them understand. My phone buzzed. A photo from Sarah. A screenshot of a news article. "Tech startups to watch. Technova's revolutionary approach to cloud infrastructure shit," Maya, Sarah had written. "Really? You're working for these guys?" I smiled and sent back a single emoji. Then I went back to debugging because there was work to do and I was exactly where I needed to be. August brought fog and revelations. The infrastructure overhaul went live on August 15th, a Wednesday that I would remember for the rest of my life because it was the day everything changed. We'd spent the previous 72 hours in the office running final tests, fixing last-minute bugs, and preparing for every possible failure mode. By the time we pushed the update to production, I'd consumed so much coffee that my hands shook and my vision occasionally blurred at the edges. Marcus called everyone into the main room at 3 a.m. We gathered around his laptop, watching the monitoring dashboard like it was the final minutes of a sports game. "Here we go," he said, and clicked the deployment button. For 5 agonizing seconds, nothing happened. Then the graph started updating. Response times dropping, throughput increasing, error rates staying steady at near 0. Someone whooped. Then everyone was cheering, hugging, high-fiving. Dev picked me up and spun me around, which would have been more triumphant if I hadn't been so exhausted that I nearly threw up. "We did it!" Marcus was grinning so hard I thought his face might split. We actually did it. The celebration lasted until dawn. Someone ordered pizza. Someone else found champagne hidden in a filing cabinet. We toasted to success, to sleep deprivation, to the future. When the sun came up, we were all sprawled across the office like survivors of a natural disaster, too tired to go home, but too wired to sleep. I ended up on one of the couches, wedged between Zara and an engineer named Kevin, who was already snoring. My phone was buzzing with notifications, Slack messages, monitoring alerts, all positive, and one text from Sarah that just said, "You're alive." Good. Nothing from my family. I closed my eyes and let the exhaustion take me. The calls started 3 days later. First, it was TechCrunch, wanting to interview Marcus about the technology. Then it was a venture capital firm that had heard interesting things and wanted to meet. Then it was Amazon. Amazon? I wasn't in the room for that call, but everyone knew about it. The whole office was buzzing with rumors. Amazon was impressed by our new infrastructure, wanted to discuss a partnership, maybe wanted to acquire us entirely. Marcus shut down the acquisition rumors immediately. "We're not selling," he announced at the next all-hands, "but we are partnering. Amazon wants to integrate our technology into their cloud platform. It's a big deal. A really big deal." I knew how big. In my first life, this partnership had been the turning point. The moment when Technova went from scrappy startup to serious player. The contract would be worth millions, would validate everything Marcus had been working toward, and I'd helped make it happen. That thought was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. On the last Friday of August, Jennifer from HR asked me to come to Marcus's office. "Have a seat," she said, gesturing to one of the chairs across from Marcus's desk. He wasn't there yet, but his space was organized chaos. Multiple monitors, sticky notes everywhere, a whiteboard covered in what looked like revenue projections. Jennifer sat across from me. "How's the internship been?" "Great," I said. "Really great. I've learned so much." "We've noticed your work on the database optimization, that was exceptional. Marcus has been very impressed." I tried not to look too pleased with myself. "Thank you." "Which brings me to why you're here." She pulled out a folder. "Your internship officially ends next week, but we'd like to make you an offer. Not for another internship, for a full-time position starting when you graduate." My heart started racing. The role would be software engineer 2, which is above entry level because of your contributions this summer. The salary is competitive and, she paused, "we'd also like to offer you equity. Stock options that vest over 4 years. She slid a paper across the desk. I looked at the numbers and felt dizzy. The salary was good, better than I'd expected for a new graduate. But the equity. If Technova succeeded the way I knew it would, those options would be worth more than I could process. "This is contingent on you graduating," Jennifer continued, "and on passing a background check. But assuming all that goes well, we'd love to have you join the team permanently." I had to clear my throat. "Yes, absolutely yes." She smiled. "Excellent. I'll send you the formal offer letter next week. Congratulations, Maya." After she left, I sat in Marcus's office alone, staring at the paper with the numbers. This was real. This was happening. In 9 months, I'd graduate and come back here as a real employee, not just an intern. So, I'd have a salary and equity and a future. I pulled out my phone to text Sarah, then hesitated. Instead, I opened a message to my mom. I got offered a full-time job. At Technova, the company I interned with. They want me to start after graduation. I hit send before I could overthink it. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Then, "That's wonderful, sweetie. Congratulations." It was warm, genuine. The first kind message she'd sent in months. I stared at it for a long moment, then typed, "How's Jessica? And the baby?" "She's doing well. Christopher is beautiful. She's exhausted but happy." Christopher, my nephew. In my first life, I'd met him twice. Once when he was a month old, and once at his 2nd birthday party. I'd sent gifts for occasions I couldn't attend, and liked photos on Facebook, and maintained the polite distance of family members who'd grown apart. "Can I call her?" I wrote. I think she'd like that. I took a breath and dialed Jessica's number. It rang 4 times, and I was about to hang up when she answered. "Maya?" "Hey, Mom said it would be okay to call." Silence. Then, "Yeah, it's okay." In the background, I could hear a baby crying. "Christopher?" I realized. My nephew was crying and Jessica was here with him, and I was 3,000 miles away. Congratulations, I said. On Christopher. Mom says he's beautiful. He is? Her voice was softer than I'd expected. He's also a terrible sleeper, but yeah, he's perfect. I'm sorry I wasn't there. For the shower? Another long pause. I was really mad at you, you know, for months. Though I thought you'd chosen some job over me, over your family. I know. But Mom showed me the article, the TechCrunch thing about your company. And Tom was like, Jess, she's working on actual revolutionary technology. That's not just some job. She laughed, but it was strained. I still don't really get what you do, but I'm starting to understand that it matters to you. It does, I said quietly. I want you to meet him, Christopher. I want my sister to know my son. My throat tightened. I want that too. Thanksgiving? She suggested. Could you come home for Thanksgiving? I thought about my calendar, about the projects I'd be working on, about all the reasons I could say no. Then I thought about Christopher, about Jessica, about all the moments I'd missed in my first life because I'd been too broke or too bitter or too tired. Well, yeah, I said, I'll be there. After we hung up, I sat in Marcus's office and cried. Not sad tears, something else. Relief, maybe, or hope. The feeling that maybe I could have both. The career and the family, the success and the relationships. Maybe I didn't have to choose. I flew home for Thanksgiving. The ticket was expensive, and I couldn't really afford it on my intern stipend, but I used my credit card and tried not to think about it. This was important. Mom picked me up from the airport. She looked older than I remembered. Or maybe I was just seeing her differently now, with the knowledge of all the years she'd spent worrying about money, about me, about everything. You look good, she said as we drove. California agrees with you. It does, I admitted. Your father wants to hear all about your job. So, he's been reading everything he can find about Technova. She glanced at me. He's proud of you. We both are. Even though I missed the shower, she was quiet for a moment. I was angry. I'm not going to pretend I wasn't, but I think I was scared too. Scared that you were choosing a life that would take you away from us permanently. I'm here now, I said. You are. She reached over and squeezed my hand. And we're glad. Jessica's house was chaos. Christopher was 3 months old, refusing to nap, and the whole place smelled like turkey and dirty diapers and that specific scent of new parenthood that's impossible to describe. Tom was attempting to cook while also holding the baby, and Jessica was simultaneously setting the table and answering work emails on her phone. Maya! She thrust Christopher at me before I could protest. Here, hold your nephew. I need to stir the gravy before it burns. Christopher was tiny and warm and smelled like milk. He looked up at me with unfocused blue eyes, made a small noise, and then spit up on my shirt. Oh God, I'm sorry, Jessica said, running over with a burp cloth. It's okay. I was laughing and crying at the same time, holding this small person who didn't exist in my first life, who was only here because Jessica was happy and healthy and not burdened with her sister's medical debt. This was worth it. Every hard choice, every uncomfortable conversation, every moment of doubt, it was all worth it for this. We had Thanksgiving dinner around a table that was slightly too small for everyone. Dad asked me technical questions about Technova that I tried to answer in terms he could understand. Mom showed me photos of the baby shower I'd missed, and I looked at them without feeling guilty. Jessica told embarrassing stories about my childhood, and I retaliated with stories about her awkward middle school phase. It felt normal. It felt like family. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat on Jessica's porch and called Sarah. How's the family reunion? She asked. Good. Really good, actually. They forgave you for the great baby shower betrayal? Something like that. I could see stars, faint against the light pollution. I think they're starting to understand, or maybe I'm starting to understand. I don't know. Understanding what? That I don't have to choose between who I am and who they want me to be. Oh, that maybe I can be both. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she said, That's very profound for someone who just got spit up on by a baby. I laughed. Shut up. I'm proud of you, Maya, for real. You took a huge risk and it paid off. It's not over yet, I said. I still have to graduate and then actually succeed at Technova. You will. I believe in you. After we hung up, I stayed on the porch a while longer, breathing in the cold November air and thinking about the future. Not the future I'd already lived, but the one I was building. The one where I made different choices and lived long enough to see them through. The one where I didn't die at 27. Senior year was a blur. I took the hardest classes I could find. Not because I needed them for graduation, but because I wanted to be ready for Technova. I spent weekends working on side projects, building my portfolio, learning new frameworks and technologies. Sarah complained that I'd become boring, that all I did was code and study and occasionally sleep. She wasn't wrong, but I also knew what was coming. In my first life, I'd coasted through senior year, confident that my degree would be enough. It hadn't been. I'd graduated with mediocre grades and limited experience, and I'd struggled to find work that matched my ambitions. This time would be different. I got a 4.0 that semester. Professors started using my projects as examples in their classes. I was offered a TA position for the spring semester, which I accepted because I needed the money and because teaching would make me better at explaining complex concepts. Technova sent me swag for Christmas. A hoodie, a water bottle, a laptop sticker with their logo. I wore the hoodie constantly, even though Sarah said it made me look like a walking billboard. In January, Marcus emailed me, "Hey Maya, exciting news. We just closed our Series A, $15 million, led by the firm Rachel works for. Your database work was a big part of that pitch. Thanks for making us look good. Can't wait to have you back in June." I read the email 3 times, then Googled the announcement. It was real. Technova had raised $15 million at a $75 million valuation. The tech press was calling them one to watch, and Marcus's face was in every article. My equity, those options I'd been offered, had just become significantly more valuable. I did the math late one night, couldn't quite believe the numbers, and did it again. If Technova continued on the trajectory I remembered, if they went public when I thought they would, if the stock price did what I knew it would, I could be a millionaire before I turned 30. The thought was so absurd that I laughed out loud, which woke up Sarah. "What?" she mumbled from her room. "Nothing, just nothing. Go back to sleep." But I couldn't sleep. I stayed up until dawn, refreshing news articles about Technova, reading analyst predictions, trying to reconcile my memories of the future with this present that was unfolding exactly as I remembered, but still felt impossible. I graduated in May. Mom, Dad, and Jessica all came to the ceremony. Christopher was 6 months old and charming everyone in the audience by making happy burbling noises during the speeches. After the ceremony, we took photos on the quad, me in my cap and gown, Jessica holding Christopher, Mom and Dad standing behind us looking proud and relieved. I had copies of these photos from my first life, similar poses, similar smiles, but the weight was different. In those old photos, I could see the uncertainty in my eyes, the fear of what came next. In these new photos, I looked confident, certain, because I knew what came next. "So, California next week?" Dad asked as we walked back to the car. "Yeah, Technova wants me to start June 1st. "We're going to miss you," Mom said, "but we're so proud of what you've accomplished." Jessica shifted Christopher to her other hip. "Oh, you have to visit, though. Christopher needs to know his cool aunt who works for a fancy tech company." "I will," I promised. And I meant it. This time, I would make time for family. This time, I could afford the plane tickets, could take the days off. She could be present in a way I never managed before. This time, I had options. Technova had moved offices. Instead of the ramshackle warehouse, we were now in a renovated building in downtown Oakland. Still industrial chic, but with actual amenities like a kitchen and a conference room that fit everyone, and bathrooms that didn't require a secret knock to open. I had my own desk again, this time in a quieter corner with the other engineers. The intern who'd been hired for the summer, a kid named Josh from MIT, had my old desk by the window. "Full circle," Dev said when he saw me noticing. "Something like that." The team had grown. We were 25 people now, with plans to hire 15 more by year's end. Marcus had brought on a CTO, a woman named Dr. Sandra Liu, who'd worked at Google for a decade and had opinions about everything. I was slightly terrified of her. My first project was integrating the Amazon partnership. It was complex, high-stakes work that required coordinating between multiple teams and keeping a major client happy. The old Maya would have been overwhelmed. The new Maya thrived. I worked 12-hour days, took meetings with Amazon engineers twice my age, and slowly earned their respect. By August, I was leading the integration team. By October, Sandra Lou was inviting me to architecture planning sessions. "You're good at this," she told me one day after I'd successfully navigated a particularly contentious debate about API design. "You have good instincts, and you know when to push back and when to compromise. That's rare." "Thank you," I said. "I'm serious. You could be a tech lead within 2 years if you keep this up." Director level within 5. Director level. In my first life, I'd never made it past mid-level engineer. I'd plateaued at companies that were always 6 months from collapse, had never been given opportunities to grow because there was nowhere to grow to. Now I was being told I could be a director. I went home that night. I had an actual apartment now, no more roommates, just me and my books and my plants, and called Jessica. "Hey," she said. "How's California?" "Good. Really good." I could hear Christopher babbling in the background. "How's my nephew?" "Currently trying to eat his own foot." "It's adorable and gross," she laughed. "Mom says you can't come home for Thanksgiving this year?" "Yeah, I'm sorry. We have a major launch in December and I can't take the time off." "It's okay. We get it. Tech waits for no one." She paused. "No, but Christmas? Please tell me you're coming for Christmas." "I'll be there," I promised. And I was. I flew home on December 23rd with gifts for everyone. Expensive gifts, the kind I could never afford before. A designer bag for Mom, power tools for Dad, educational toys for Christopher, a spa day package for Jessica. "Maya, this is too much," Mom protested when she opened her gift. "No," I said. "It's not. I can afford it, and I want to." What I didn't say that this was me proving something, proving that my choices had been right, that I'd succeeded in ways that justified everything I'd sacrificed, proving that I wasn't a burden, that I could contribute, that I could help instead of being helped. Jessica seemed to understand. She hugged me tight and whispered, "I'm glad you went to California, even if it sucked at the time." "Well, yeah, I'm glad you chose yourself." Technova went public in April. The IPO was massive. $200 million raised at a valuation that made me dizzy when I saw it in the news. Marcus rang the opening bell at NASDAQ, and we all watched from the office as the stock price climbed and climbed. My options vested over 4 years, but I'd been there for 2 years already. Half of my shares were available. I sat at my desk looking at my brokerage account, watching the numbers update in real time. The math was simple but incomprehensible. I was worth $2.3 million on paper. $2.3 million. I hadn't sold anything yet, wouldn't for a while, but the knowledge that I could was overwhelming. I could pay off my student loans. I could buy a house. I could afford cancer treatment when it came, because it would come. I knew exactly when. November of next year, when I'd be 25. A persistent cough that wouldn't go away, a chest x-ray that showed something concerning, a biopsy that confirmed the worst. I'd spent 2 years trying not to think about it, but the knowledge was always there, lurking. I would get sick. The question was whether I'd survive this time. I'd already made an appointment with an oncologist for next November, had already started researching treatment options and experimental trials. I had insurance through Technova, good insurance, and I had money. I had every advantage I'd lacked the first time, but cancer didn't care about advantages. "Maya?" I looked up. Zara was standing by my desk, holding champagne. "We're celebrating. You coming?" "Yeah," I said. "Yeah, I'll be right there." The celebration lasted hours. Where people gave toasts, Marcus cried. He claimed it was allergies, but we all knew better. Sandra Lou gave a speech about the journey we'd been on and the journey ahead. I stood in the corner with Dev, both of us holding champagne and watching the chaos. "You know what's weird?" he said. "I keep waiting for it to feel different, like we're public now, we're rich, but I feel exactly the same as I did when we were in that shitty warehouse eating pizza at 3 a.m. "Maybe that's good," I said. "Maybe it means we did it for the right reasons." "Maybe." He clinked his glass against mine. "Here's to the journey, I guess." To the journey. But as I drank, I couldn't help thinking about the other journey ahead, the one I'd walked before, the one I had to walk again, but this time with resources and knowledge and a fighting chance. I just had to survive long enough to use them. The cough started in October. At first, I ignored it. Everyone in the office had some variation of a cold. It was fall, people were stressed, someone was always sniffling in meetings. I took cough drops, drank tea with honey, assumed it would pass. It didn't pass. By early November, I was coughing hard enough that meetings stopped when I had a fit. Zara gave me the number of her doctor. Dev suggested I take a few days off to rest. Marcus sent me home one afternoon saying I looked terrible. I knew what it was. I'd known for 2 years what was coming, but knowing and experiencing were different things entirely. On November 12th, I went to my doctor's appointment. A different doctor than I'd seen the first time, a different office, but the same script. Describe your symptoms. Idol, let's do a chest x-ray. Let's wait for the results. The x-ray showed a shadow. Of course it did. The doctor, Dr. Patel, young and serious with kind eyes, referred me to an oncologist. It could be nothing, she said, but given your age and the presentation, we want to rule out anything serious. It's cancer, I said. She blinked. Let's not jump to, it's cancer. Stage 2, most likely, non-small cell lung carcinoma. I watched her face shift from concern to confusion. I need to see an oncologist as soon as possible. I need a biopsy and a CT scan, and I need to start treatment immediately. How do you... Please, I said. Just trust me. She did. Within 3 days, I had appointments scheduled, scans ordered, a treatment team assembling. In my first life, this process had taken weeks. It had involved insurance denials and scheduling conflicts and bureaucratic nightmares. This time, I had money and determination and the willingness to pay out of pocket for anything insurance wouldn't cover immediately. The biopsy confirmed what I already knew. Stage 2 lung cancer, aggressive but treatable. Dr. Chen, my oncologist, a woman in her 50s who'd published extensively on novel cancer treatments, laid out my options. Standard treatment would be surgery followed by chemotherapy, she said, but there's also a clinical trial at Stanford. Immunotherapy combined with targeted therapy. The early results are promising. I knew about the trial. In my first life, I'd read about it in cancer forms while dying in a hospital bed. He had known it existed, but couldn't access it because I didn't have the connections, or the resources, or the health insurance that would cover experimental treatments. I want the trial, I said. It's competitive. We'd have to apply, see if you qualify. I'll qualify. I pulled out my phone and showed her my research. Pages of notes I'd compiled over 2 years about this exact trial, about the enrollment criteria, about what I'd need to do to get in. I meet every requirement, and I can pay if insurance won't cover it. She looked at me strangely. Most patients don't come this prepared. I'm not most patients. I didn't tell my family immediately. What would I say, that I was sick again? Except not again, because this was the first time for them, but the second time for me, that I was dying maybe, but had a better chance this time because I'd chosen ambition over family obligations 2 years ago. I told Technova I needed medical leave. Marcus, to his credit, didn't ask questions. Take all the time you need, he said. Your health is the priority. And Maya? He looked serious. Whatever you need, better doctors, specialist care, experimental treatments, Technova will cover it. Our insurance is good. But if there are gaps, the company will make up the difference. I almost cried. Thank you. You helped build this company. We take care of our own. I started treatment in December. The trial combined immunotherapy with a targeted drug that attacked the specific genetic mutation in my cancer cells. The side effects were brutal. Nausea, fatigue, mouth sores, a constant metallic taste, but manageable. More importantly, they were different from chemo. I didn't lose my hair. I didn't waste away. I looked sick, but not dying. On Christmas Eve, Jessica called. Where are you? She asked. Mom's got the whole house decorated, and Christopher keeps asking about Aunt Maya. I was in my apartment, recovering from my latest treatment, watching snow fall outside my window. Oakland didn't get snow, but it was cold enough that I could almost imagine it. I can't make it this year, I said. What? Maya, you promised. I know, I'm sorry, something came up. What could possibly? Are you okay? You sound weird. I closed my eyes. I couldn't keep lying. I'm sick, Jess. Silence. Then, how sick? Cancer, lung cancer. I'm in treatment, and it's going well, but I can't travel right now. I heard her gasp. Heard Christopher crying in the background. We'd heard Tom asking what was wrong. Heard the whole careful structure I'd built start to crumble. Oh my God, Maya, why didn't you tell us? I didn't want you to worry. We're your family. Of course we're going to worry. She was crying now. How long have you known? About a month. A month. She was quiet, and I could hear her breathing hard, trying to compose herself. Are you going to be okay? I think so. The treatment is working. The trial I'm in is showing good results. Trial? What trial? I explained as simply as I could about Stanford and the immunotherapy and the targeted drugs, about how this was cutting-edge treatment, how I was lucky to get into the trial, how the prognosis was good. What I didn't say, that I'd planned for this, that I'd known it was coming, that I'd spent 2 years positioning myself to survive. I'm coming out there, Jessica said, tomorrow. I'm getting on a plane. You don't have to. Yes, I do. You're my sister, and you're sick, and I'm coming. She hung up before I could argue. Jessica arrived on Christmas Day with Tom and Christopher. They took a rideshare directly from the airport to my apartment, and when I opened the door, Christopher, now 18 months old and talking in simple sentences, took one look at me and said, "Mama says Aunt Maya's sick." "Yeah, buddy," I said, "but I'm getting better." Jessica hugged me so hard I thought my ribs might crack. "You look terrible." "Thanks. You look exhausted." "I have a toddler. That's my baseline." She pulled back, studying my face. "Seriously, though, are you okay?" "I'm managing." They stayed for 3 days. Jessica cooked. Badly, but I appreciated the effort. Tom handled Christopher, and we watched movies and talked about everything and nothing. It felt like old times, like before the resentment and distance, like we were sisters again instead of strangers who shared DNA. On the last night, after Christopher was asleep and Tom was in the guest room, Jessica and I sat on my balcony with mugs of tea. "I'm sorry," she said suddenly. "For what?" "For the baby shower, for making you feel like you had to choose, for being angry when you chose your career." She stared into her mug. "If you hadn't taken that internship, if you'd come home like we wanted, would you have the resources to fight this now?" I thought about it. Probably not. So you were right, and I was wrong. It wasn't about being right or wrong. It was about... I searched for the right words. It was about building a life that gave me options. And yeah, that life includes being able to afford good health care, but it also includes you being here now, and me being able to see Christopher grow up, and having a future worth fighting for. She wiped her eyes. "You're going to beat this, right? Tell me you're going to beat this." "I'm going to beat this," I said, and this time, I believed it. The treatment took 6 months. 6 months of weekly appointments, of scans and blood tests, of managing side effects and celebrating small victories. My tumor markers dropped. The shadow on my x-rays shrank. Dr. Chen used words like exceptional response and very promising. In April, she showed me a new scan. "The tumor is 90% smaller," she said. "At this rate, you'll be in remission by June." "Remission," I repeated. The word felt foreign. Impossible. "We'll keep monitoring, of course, and you'll need annual scans for the next 5 years." "But Maya," she smiled. "You did it. You beat it." I sat in her office and cried. Relief, joy, disbelief, all of it hit me at once. In my first life, I'd never gotten to this point. I'd fought for 6 months and lost, had watched the cancer spread despite treatment, had eventually been told there was nothing more to do. This time, I'd won. I called Jessica from the parking lot. "I'm in remission," she screamed so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "Oh my God, Maya, that's amazing. We have to celebrate. I'm calling Mom right now." That weekend, my whole family came to California. Mom, Dad, Jessica, Tom, Christopher. We had dinner at an expensive restaurant downtown. My treat. And toasted to health, to family, to second chances. "I'm proud of you," Dad said, raising his glass, "for everything you've accomplished, for fighting, for being so damn stubborn." "I learned from the best," I said, looking at Mom. She laughed, wiped her eyes. To Maya, our fighter. We clinked glasses, and I looked around the table at the people I loved. Christopher was making a mess with his pasta. Jessica was showing Tom something on her phone. Mom and Dad were holding hands. This was what I'd fought for. Not just my life, but this. The ability to be here, to be present, to have a future with the people who mattered. I went back to work in June. Technova had grown even more during my absence. We were up to 75 employees, had opened a satellite office in Seattle, and I were in talks about international expansion. Sandra Liu had been acting CTO while I was gone, but Marcus wanted me back in leadership. "We need you on the architecture team," he said during my first week back. Your perspective, your technical skills, we missed you. I might not be able to work the same hours, I warned. I need to be careful about my health. We'll work around it. Your health comes first, always. And they did. I worked reasonable hours, took breaks when I needed them, and nobody questioned it. If anything, my illness had made me better at my job. I'd learned to prioritize, to delegate, to trust my team. I was more effective in 8 hours than I'd been in 12. By September, I was officially promoted to principal engineer. By December, Sandra offered me the role of VP of engineering. You're not serious, I said. Well, completely serious. You understand the technology better than anyone. You've proven you can lead, and the team respects you. Plus, you survived cancer and came back stronger. That's the kind of resilience we need in leadership. I thought about it for exactly 10 seconds before accepting. My stock options fully vested in June, 2 years after the IPO. The share price had tripled since going public. When I finally sold a portion, just enough to feel secure, the amount in my bank account was surreal. I was a millionaire. Actually, truly a millionaire. I sat in my financial advisor's office, looking at the numbers, still not quite believing them. This was the dream I'd chased in my first life. The success I'd always wanted but never achieved. And now it was real. What do you want to do with it? My advisor asked. I thought about that. About the future I died before seeing. About the life I was building now. I want to set up a fund, I said, for cancer patients who can't afford experimental treatments. To help people access the kind of care that saved my life. That's very generous. It's not generous. It's survival. I survived because I had resources. Other people should have that same chance. I donated $1 million to establish the fund. It felt right, felt like closing a circle. On the anniversary of my rebirth, March 15th, 4 years after I'd woken up in my college apartment with burnt toast and impossible knowledge, I took the day off and went hiking in the Oakland Hills. The trail was steep, my lungs protested, but I pushed myself to the top. When I got there, I sat on a rock and looked out at the bay, at the city sprawling below. So at the life I'd built. 4 years ago, I'd been given an impossible gift. A second chance, a chance to make different choices, to prioritize differently, to save myself. I'd taken that chance. I'd hurt people in the process, had made decisions that seemed selfish, had chosen myself when I was supposed to choose family. And it had worked. I was alive. I was successful. I had relationships with my family that were healthier than they'd ever been, built on mutual respect instead of guilt. I had a career I loved, resources to help others, a future stretching out ahead of me. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. Christopher keeps asking when Aunt Maya is coming to visit. Please tell me you can make it for his birthday next month. I smiled and typed back, I'll be there. Wouldn't miss it. Another message. This one from Marcus. Board meeting went great. They approved international expansion. VP of Global Engineering has a nice ring to it. Want the job? I laughed. Can I think about it? You have until Monday. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Somewhere in the city below, people were making choices. Big and small, selfish and selfless, right and wrong. They were building lives, making mistakes, hoping for second chances they might never get. I'd gotten mine, and I'd made it count. The conference room at Technova's San Francisco headquarters smelled like new carpet and expensive coffee. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the bay, and the morning light turned everything golden. I stood at the head of the table, looking at the faces of my team, 20 engineers from 6 countries. Brilliant people who'd chosen to work here because of the technology, the culture, the mission. Before we start, I said, I have an announcement. Everyone looked up from their laptops. I'm stepping down as VP of Global Engineering. The silence was immediate and total. Not because I'm leaving, I added quickly, but because I'm moving into a new role, Chief Technology Officer. The room erupted. People were congratulating me, asking questions, making jokes about how they'd have to start calling me Chief instead of Maya. Sandra Liu, who was retiring after 10 years with the company, raised her water bottle in a toast. To Maya, the best successor I could have asked for. After the meeting, I went to my office, a real office now, with a door and a view and a couch where people occasionally napped. My phone had exploded with messages. From Mom. So proud of you, sweetie. Your father won't stop bragging to his golf buddies. From Jessica. CTO. That's like super important, right? Christopher wants to know if you're basically Iron Man now. From Sarah, who I hadn't talked to in months. Maya Chen, CTO. I always knew you'd be running the world someday. Drinks when you're in town? I scrolled through them, smiling, until I got to one that made me pause. From an unknown number. Hi, Maya. This is Jennifer Martinez. I recruited you for your internship at Technova back in 2018. I saw the news about your promotion. I just wanted to say, I knew you were special from the moment I read your resume. Congratulations on everything you've accomplished. You've come so far. I stared at the message for a long time. Jennifer Martinez, who'd sent an email 6 years ago that changed my life, who'd given a college student a chance at a scrappy startup that could have failed, could have been nothing, but wasn't. I typed back, thank you for taking a chance on me, for everything. Then I walked to the window and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, a college student was probably staring at an email, trying to decide if they should take a risk. Somewhere, someone was choosing between what was safe and what could be extraordinary. I hoped they chose extraordinary. I hoped they chose themselves. Because sometimes the selfish choice is the one that saves you. Sometimes choosing your dreams over your family's expectations is the thing that lets you help them in ways you never could have otherwise. Sometimes you have to burn the toast and miss the shower and disappoint the people you love in order to become the person you're meant to be. I'd learned that the hard way. Twice, but I'd learned it. That night, I had dinner with Jessica and her family. Christopher was 5 now, starting kindergarten in the fall, already showing an alarming aptitude for taking things apart to see how they worked. He's going to be an engineer like his aunt, Jessica said, watching him disassemble his toy robot at the table. God help us all, I replied. After dinner, Jessica and I sat on her porch while Tom handled bedtime routines inside. It had become our tradition when I visited, these quiet moments where we talked about everything and nothing. I never told you, Jessica said, but Mom showed me something a few months ago. Why? An old college acceptance letter from when I got into that art program in New York. You wanted to go to art school? I did, but Mom and Dad thought it was impractical, said I should get a business degree, something stable. So I did. She shrugged. I wonder sometimes what would have happened if I'd chosen differently. Do you regret it? No. I love my life. I love Tom and Christopher and my job, even if it's not what I dreamed about when I was 20. She looked at me. But watching you choose yourself, watching you fight for what you wanted even when it was hard, it made me think. Made me realize that maybe I'd been too careful, too willing to do what everyone expected. It's not too late, I said, to choose yourself. I know, and I am. I started painting again. Actually, just for me, nothing serious. But it feels good, she smiled. You taught me that it's okay to want things, to prioritize yourself sometimes. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars appear one by one. Hey, Maya, Jessica said after a while. Yeah? I'm glad you missed my baby shower. I laughed. Really? Really, because if you'd come home, if you'd chosen us over Technova, she paused, you'd be dead. And I'd rather have a living sister who disappoints me occasionally than a dead one who always said yes. My throat tightened. Jess, I mean it. You made the right choice, even when it hurt, especially when it hurt. She reached over and squeezed my hand. Thank you for being brave enough to choose yourself. I flew back to San Francisco the next morning. As the plane took off, I thought about choices and consequences. About the life I'd lived and the one I was living now. In my first life, I died young and regretful. Had spent my last days apologizing for being a burden. I'd made all the right choices. Been the good daughter, the supportive sister, the family member who always put others first. And it had killed me. In this life, I'd been selfish. I'd chosen a startup over a baby shower, a career over family expectations, my dreams over their comfort. I'd disappointed people I loved. I'd hurt them. And I'd survived. Not just survived, thrived, built something extraordinary, became someone my family could be proud of, someone who could help instead of being helped. The plane leveled out, and I looked down at the clouds below, thinking about all the parallel lives I could have lived, all the versions of Maya who made different choices, There was the Maya who went to the baby shower and took the insurance job, who died broke and bitter. There was the Maya who never got the internship offer, who lived a normal life and never knew what she was missing. And there was this Maya, the one who woke up with a second chance and grabbed it with both hands, who risked everything for a startup that could have failed, who chose herself when everyone said she should choose differently. This Maya was a CTO at 30. This Maya had beaten cancer. This Maya had changed the world just a little bit and had the bank account and the relationships and the future to show for it. This Maya had won. The flight attendant offered me a drink. I asked for champagne, expensive and celebratory, because why not? I could afford it. I'd earned it. As I sipped, I thought about a college student somewhere staring at an email from a startup they'd never heard of, trying to decide if it was worth the risk. I hoped they said yes. I hoped they chose the uncertain future over the safe present. I hoped they learned what I'd learned, that sometimes the most selfish choice is the most important one, that disappointing your family is better than disappointing yourself, that life is short and uncertain and the only person you can truly count on is you. I hoped they survived long enough to understand. The plane carried me home to San Francisco, to Technova, to the life I'd built from the ashes of the one I'd lost. The clouds parted, the city appeared below, and I smiled. Life unfolds like the wind, unpredictable, powerful, beyond our control. But sometimes,
oh my gosh,
if
we
you're
just
very
had a raid
lucky
from
and
the
very
wonderful
brave,
Floral Lion.
you
I'm
get a
just showing
chance
some
to
of my
adjust your
work
sails.
Right now. Robin,
I'd adjusted mine, and I'd sailed into
having
something
browser issues.
beautiful.
Okay, you got this. Robin is an incredible game designer and developer, and welcome me. Do love a giant cock. Exactly. I say Strachan. You okay, Carson? Damn it, Bacon. Cat on the keyboard. Cat on the keyboard. This is some of my work, Robin. Well, if Robin's away for a sec, what were you guys doing today? Divine Dev, right? Hi, Dev. Came at the perfect time. I'm showing tits. Oh, this is my first ever gouache painting. I'm raid enthusiast, Thea. This is my first ever gouache painting, and this is my second ever gouache painting, Little Landscapes, I'm painting more little landscapes at the moment. I love them. That's not a little landscape. That actually, I think, is baby's first still life, which I called Still Life, on account of it being my bathroom windowsill. Fix my browser. Welcome in. Hi, Robin. How was your stream? What were you doing? And we just had a... Oh, Floral. I love this. Wait, we just had a raid from the wonderful Floral Lion. Floral, this is so cute. Oh, the gradient in here. So satisfying. See? Thank you so much for the follow. Welcome. What is Game Doll? Doddle? Robin no longer game devs. He dropped all that to become a Game Doll master. Tell me more about that. We got little to no work done. Played Movie Doll, Game Doll, and Songless. What are these?